Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni. No Paul Konerdijk today. Paul's back home. He's got some family stuff to do. We wish nothing bad, good stuff. We hope Paul's doing great back in Michigan. So solo today. And Michigan State seems solo in a lot of ways in terms of trying to play defense in that Washington passing attack. Michigan State, you saw what happened. 39-28, 22-0 in the early going. In the pre-snap read, I talked about Washington's passing attack and how difficult it was going to be for Michigan State to stop the passing attack. And I expected that Michigan State could get into a shootout, a game into the 30s, and from there you just kind of roll the dice and hope that you are still competitive. There was no shootout. Michigan State showed up with a cap gun today. The offense didn't do anything in the first quarter, couldn't run the ball, which was a big negative for Michigan State. In order for Michigan State to stay competitive in a shootout against that offense, the running game had to produce like it did in the first two games. And I thought it would. I thought Michigan State made a lot of progress early in the season with the inside zone running attack. Today, Washington's defensive tackles, who I said in the pre-snap read were pretty good. I didn't know they were this good, and frankly, I'm not sure Michigan State's players thought or knew they were going to be that good either. I mean, they respected the opponent, but 99-91, Michigan State's double teams had trouble moving them off the ball. Never got the running game established. Berger was, he was around 1 yard per carry average for the game. So Berger, let me look this up. Berger, 13 carries, 27 yards, just over 2 yards a carry, but he was under 1 yard a carry for a long time. So Michigan State unable to establish the run. That was the first problem. Then you can't establish the run. Peyton Thorne was put in situations where the passing attack had to carve themselves out of negative down and distance situations, and Michigan State was supposed to be the team with the pass rush. Michigan State came into the game ranked #1 in the country in sacks. Today, 0 sacks, not much pressure on Penix. Penix, an outstanding quarterback. You guys remember him in Indiana. He's better now. I think he's a full-fledged NFL quarterback if he stays healthy. You don't get pressure on him with those receivers, and he's got 3 receivers that were 4-star recruits. Washington struggled last year. I don't know how that happened. They've got a lot of talent. Penix was not part of it, but they had a lot of other talent that they were able to build into. So no pressure on Penix. Couldn't cover those guys, and last year's big problem, the pass defense, reared its ugly head again. So Kimbrough, they really went after Kimbrough. DeBoer for Washington, in the offensive scheme for Washington, they obviously wanted to pinpoint some matchup advantages. They found it against number 12, Kimbrough. Kimbrough's had a pretty good season to this point. They went at him no matter where he was, no matter who he was covering, and he struggled. Mel Tucker acknowledged that in the post-game press conference. They made some changes at halftime. Justin White came in and played in the slot, and also Aaron Brule played in the slot when they kind of went to a 4-3 nickel, or a 4-3 look with a big linebacker in the slot area. Did that a little bit also. But Kimbrough, you know, Justin White's got a lot of speed, and he's got a lot of ability, and he's got a background in special teams. Kimbrough's been on the field enough to make some mistakes and get beat like he did today and have some problems last year against Ohio State. But a lot of people are wondering, well, if Kimbrough's not very good, what is Michigan State going to do to supplant him, replace him, if a team is going to just attack him the way Washington did? And you assume someone else out there can just come in and take over for him and do better. Well, that's not the way it is. I mean, these coaches are at practice. They know what they've got. And whether you like it or not, Kimbrough's the best player they have available to them in the slot area to play that nickel. So he's having a rough day today, so they changed it up just to see what happened. You know, it seemed like they didn't really go after his replacement, White, all that much. Washington had a big lead at that point, so their psychology changed a little bit. They kind of played a little bit more prevent on defense. Michigan State made a comeback, and Washington all of a sudden went 3 and out a couple of times. Did White play well enough? He made a big mistake also. 3rd down, he had a coverage bust. Guy was wide open, #1. Ozunde, I think's his name, wide open. The quarterback happened to miss that one. But Justin White was not perfect either. Those guys are out there trying and so forth. But to me, one of the biggest, most disturbing things, if you're a Michigan State fan, is that there was a return of defensive mental errors, coverage busts that weren't because of, you know, physically not being able to cover somebody, not because of structural situations like where if they're playing cover 3 and they throw underneath to a hitch, it's just something that the coverage allows. And there was a key play early in the game when they were building their 22-0 lead, when it was a 3rd and 12, and Michigan State was playing a deep cover 3 in front of Amir's speed, and Amir was just playing the coverage that was assigned to him. I assume he didn't miss a sign or something like that, but Speed gave up a big cushion on there, like a 15-yard cushion, like a George Perlis era cushion, and they hit a little hitch for like just taking candy from a baby, 14 yards on 3rd and 12, first down, touchdown, and that was part of the 22-0 lead. That's a structural, I don't want to say mistake, but that was a structural explanation to that particular play. Other times going against Kimbrough, that might be a physical athletic situation. On other ones, when it's a mental bust, an assignment breakdown, I think you have him, you think I have him, the guy's wide open. That's what happened when Michigan State had just cut it to 15 points. And Washington came out with a misdirection, sprint out right, and they leaked out a receiver deep. And I'm not sure whose fault it was. Angelo Gross was back there at the scene of the crime when it happened, but Tucker said there was an over route that didn't get picked up. I'm not sure exactly what happened or whose fault it was, but that was the type of mistake that Michigan State made too often last year in the last 1/3 of the season. And the first two games this year, they were more assignment sound. You didn't see those type of errors. And with Michigan State's coaching changes in the defensive backfield and more returning players, there was reason to believe that they had matured past some of those mistakes. Today, some of those came back to haunt them a little bit. Washington's got a sophisticated attack, and they look for ways to undress you with plays like that. And this week in the press conference, DeBoer said that when he watched Michigan State's film, he was impressed at how sound Michigan State was in defense, and how, in his words, Michigan State was difficult to fool. He thought they were very sound and square and did things correctly. That's a coach that wants to try to fool people, and he's just getting started here as head coach at the Pac-12 level, and he fooled Michigan State's defense a couple times with some well-designed plays, some sophisticated stuff, and Michigan State wasn't good enough across the board to handle it. Lack of pass rush, and then the individual matchups with Kimbrough struggling, and then some coverage bust to go with it. So it was the full gamut of problems, including problems at the linebacker position. There's a linebacker coverage early on with a little an underneath route when it looked like the middle linebacker. I'm not sure who was playing Mike on that play, but a linebacker kind of vacated an area. Again, that had been a problem all year. So across the board on defense, there are problems in terms of trying to stop Michael Penix in Washington. He ends up 24 for 40 for 397. He had about 280 yards at halftime. If this game had remained close, it seemed like he would have been capable of throwing for well into the 400s if he needed to. But Washington's offense, fizzled out a little bit in the second half. Like I said, maybe the psychology changed. Michigan State, to their credit, kept coming back. And Peyton Thorne in a blowout situation at one point was 19 out of 21, and they were down by 3 touchdowns. He was more accurate than he was in the first two games, hitting intermediate routes, short routes. Wasn't real productive with downfield yardage through the first quarter and a half or even the first half of the game, but the percentage was high and took Michigan State in for a touchdown drive. You saw that. The sideline was amped up. When they cut it to 15, there was still belief on the sideline, Mel Tucker said, and you could kind of see it, that Thorne felt like that they could move on this team and get into that shootout that we thought was going to happen. But the coverage busts kept happening on defense, and ended up being a nightmarish situation for Michigan State. The mood of the team. Tucker seemed upbeat. It's just one loss. When these losses pile up later in the year, you might get more despondent reactions from the players. Their chins are still up. Cal Halliday was the only defensive player that played, and he was beaten on a play for a touchdown, and Tucker mentioned that just didn't play correct technique on that, and that's difficult. They went 5 wide, and Michigan State on that play played press 4 guys, and Halliday was an off man-to-man. He was on the running back. He covered the running back, so Michigan State was declaring man-to-man. Press on the wide receivers, off man when it was running back versus linebacker. That was the matchup they went to. Halliday said it was something they worked on, something they thought Washington could spring on them. He had them covered footwork-wise, but it wasn't the proper technique in terms of turning around and looking for the ball. Difficult to do out here with a noisy stadium. Halliday knew that he could have done it better, but it was 7 points, and that was a 3rd down play. As far as the stadium, great atmosphere. My first time out here for a game. I've been to Oregon and Arizona State and a few other places. This was great. Saw some old Spartan fans, did some sailgating today. That's a bucket list thing. Got a little sunburn here. That was nice. Hung out with some Michigan State friends. I saw some others. Those of you that said hello to their subscribers, thanks for coming up and saying hi. That was great. It's beautiful. You always hear about what it's like out here, but it still doesn't get enough attention as to how unique it is with Lake Washington right there, and the sailgating, and the covered grandstands. You hear about how loud it is in here, how it's the way that the covered grandstands puts the noise back out in the field. The press box was open air, so we could hear it. Usually in the press area, we can't really hear the crowd. I was amazed how loud it was. I was wearing earplugs. I was texting friends of mine that were in the stands. I'm like, is this as loud as I think it is? They're like, yeah, this is one of the loudest crowds I've been around. It's up there with Ohio State, I would say. And in some ways, I think it's even louder than a dome. I'm not sure if that's possible or not. Maybe I'm crazy about that. You guys go ahead and post and tell me if I'm crazy about that. But it was loud. It was electric. It was great college football. It's unique. It was uncommon. And Michigan State had their hands full, and the crowd did have an impact, I think, on a couple of those third down malfunctions early in the game for Michigan State. As far as Michigan State's comeback goes, the injuries catching up with Michigan State. Jaden Reed, their best receiver, out today. They missed him. Michigan State was still productive at the wide receiver position. Keon Coleman, kind of a breakthrough game, 9 receptions, 116 yards. Trey Mosley, a big touchdown catch on 4th down. Slot fade that was very similar to the play that Jaden Reed had on 4th down to help them beat Penn State last year. Peyton Thorne ends up 30 of 42 for 323 yards. Statistically, might be the best game Peyton Thorne's ever had in terms of completion percentage and getting over 300 yards. Now, a lot of those at the end of the game were kind of cotton candy yards because Washington was rolling back their defense and playing prevent defense and playing the clock and allowing some of the little dink and dunks to the flat that would go for 20 yards or so. But there were some mixed in there where Peyton Thorne really had to drive the ball and hit some receivers, and he has to feel pretty good about that. And Peyton Thorne showed some guts also, tried him out that comeback. There was one play that was like 3rd and 10, and he got rushed out of the pocket, and he keeps it. He's on the move. He probably knows he's not going to get the first down. He lowers his shoulder and takes a tremendous hit on the far sideline. Had to have stunned him a little bit. That set up like 4th and 4, 4th and 2 actually, but he tried to lower his shoulder and fight for a first down. Took a big hit. 4th and 2, Michigan State, illegal snap. The play was botched, but Michigan State was fortunate that it was called an illegal snap, dead ball, 5-yard penalty. So they got another chance at 4th and 7. When Thorne fumbled that one, I didn't ask him, but I suspect that big hit that he took had an impact on him fumbling that snap. A lot of credit to him, a lot of toughness that he showed to stay on the field and through that hit and try to get that first down. Came back on 4th and 7, picked it up, and they went back in and scored on that drive. Peyton Thorne, he's always had the respect of his teammates, even more after this. He tried to do everything he could to bring them back. So can Thorne build on that a little bit? Maybe so. But there was one mistake he made. At a point when he was 19 out of 21, and they were down by 15, I think it was, he had Montorie Foster wide open on a post route and threw it into the ground, incomplete. And Peyton Thorne, it didn't show up on TV, but Peyton Thorne did one of these numbers. He hit himself in the head. I didn't ask him about that after the game. Maybe on Tuesday he'll probably bring it up when he looks at the film again. But there weren't a lot of easy things for Michigan State to capitalize on. That was one, and for a guy that was 19 of 21 at that point, for that to be the first inaccurate pass he threw all day, an inopportune time, because it really should have been a touchdown. I'm not sure what that would have cut the lead to. I could look it up if Konendecker here. I could look it up, but I'll be writing about it. But that was a play that got away, and there were a few others. But make no mistake about it, Washington was the better team. That passing attack is for real. I'll be interested to see what Washington's passing attack does to other teams on their schedule this year. I think Penix is the real deal, and they've got excellent receivers, and there's a lot to cover in their passing attack, and it's sophisticated also. It reminds me of Purdue a little bit. Coming into this game, I thought that Washington was somewhere between Maryland and Purdue. I think I'd put them up there with Purdue in that Purdue-Penn State category. Excellent team. They're a handful, especially if you don't get the pass rush going. Now, Michigan State, unable to get the running game going. How does that carry on into the coming games against Minnesota? That's disconcerting. And the lack of the pass rush. We were starting to think that maybe that pass rush would be something that would be a consistent strength throughout the season. I didn't necessarily think Washington's pass protection was going to be that great. Maybe it was. They've got 3 4-star recruits on that offensive line, and they had the capacity to hold the tight ends in for maximum protection. I'd have to look at it again, but I don't think they did that very often. I think they were able to protect with the standard 5, maybe a running back. But Michigan State's strength as a pass rush that had been such a weapon that needed to be an equalizer today was not there either. So across the board, Washington handled their business, checking boxes all the way down. I think that's a pretty good team. Michigan State, now if you're Michigan State and you want to have another one of those 9-3 type seasons, 10-2 type seasons, you had to win this. Not because Washington is not a good team, but because anytime that you want to get to 9-3, you have to go 3-0 in the non-conference season. Now you don't have that. Secondly, the running attack is a question. Second, and the injuries adding up on defense. Jacob Slade didn't make the trip at defensive tackle. Darius Snow out for the season at linebacker. Xavier Henderson, captain material at safety. He's still out indefinitely. and Simeon Barrow played through some bangs today at defensive tackle. But you're taking away a key player at all three levels of the defense. Maybe your best defensive tackle, an NFL guy, Slade probably, your best linebacker in Snow probably, and your best safety. Out. That did not help against this offense today. So Michigan State back to work. Now, Minnesota's red hot. Up there with Michigan and Ohio State is one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten. Michigan State has them next week. Minnesota's well put together, strong package on offense. Different than this, they'll be trying to hammer the run against Michigan State. Michigan State did a good job stopping the run. Not a great Washington running attack, but Michigan State, to its credit, Michigan State with a couple of goal line stands inside the 1 yard line became tough to run against in the red zone. That bodes well for what they're going to see against Minnesota and then onto the rest of it. But in terms of trying to get to a 9-3, 10-2 season, this loss not only is obviously a check in the loss column as opposed to the win column, but also there's, I don't want to say red flags, but disconcerting things about the running attack, even the pass rush and the pass defense, and whether that can equate to victories over Maryland, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those other wins you need to get up to 9 wins or so. More questions now about a Michigan State team that came into this game ranked number 11 in the country, unable to play like a number 11 ranked team today, and not like a team that can win 9 or 10 games. They'll get back to work and try to make progress toward that end next week, but it won't get easier. Different style of team with Minnesota, but that's going to be tough. Kona Dyke, I hope you're doing great back in Michigan. Thanks to Bailey for holding the camera. We almost had Rico Beard out here, but he had to get to the airport. We almost had him. Maybe we'll get him after the game in Minnesota. But I want to say thanks to all the SpartanMag.com subscribers that have been there supporting us for years. Stick around to SpartanMag.com for continued coverage. But for right now, for Paul Kona Dyke back in Michigan, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com from Husky Stadium in Seattle, Washington, for SpartanMag.com.